Well, hello, Ronin leaders. Welcome to another edition of the Ronin Leadership Podcast. One of the things to remember is that while we're enjoying the unofficial start of summer, we remember what this day is all about. It is to remember those people who have sacrificed and given their blood and their lives for our country, be it military, be it law enforcement, police, intelligence, what have you, first responders, firefighters. I think this is a day to memorialize all the folks who serve and who have made the ultimate sacrifice to keep all of us safe. So let's keep that in mind while we're enjoying this day, this weekend, this holiday, and there'll undoubtedly be a lot of picnics and parties and barbecues, and again, the unofficial start of summer. So be safe and make it a good weekend. I want to continue to thank all of you for supporting this channel and continuing to support my books. I reached a couple weeks ago my latest thriller, Blood Promise. It turned out to be a #1 Amazon bestseller in several categories, military thriller and espionage. So very gratified for that. Thanks for all of you who have downloaded and purchased my books. I'm busily at work on #3 of the Jack Trench series, and I'm about 20 chapters in. Hopefully we'll get that done this summer and get it out to you by this fall. But thanks all of you for supporting the channel. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the like button, share these videos and this channel with your friends, and spread the word. And we've got a whole bunch of really great guests lined up very soon, and we've got some great content, and so looking forward to it. So I was thinking about what I want to talk about today, and by the way, yes, I do start every day with a cold plunge. So I decided I should wear this shirt today. I plunge every morning before I work out, and even on off days I still plunge, usually 5 to 8 minutes. Today I did about 8 minutes at 41 degrees. I've already talked about the benefits of cold plunging, and I highly recommend it to those of you who want to work on your resilience and also do something good for your body. But that's not what this is all about today. I got to thinking about books that have shaped me and hopefully have made me a better leader. And one of the things I'm doing is there's a Stoic challenge about reading to lead. There's a saying that all leaders are readers, and that is the truth. If you are not reading on a regular, consistent basis, and whether it's nonfiction or fiction, if you're not reading, you are robbing yourself of a tool of leadership that you should be availing yourself of. All great leaders were readers. I recently read some interesting tidbits where Napoleon, in one of his campaigns, was such a prolific reader that they were hundreds of miles away from his home base out in the boonies, and he brought a whole library with him because he was a voracious reader. Charles de Gaulle, in the middle of World War II, managed to read 2 to 3 books a week while he was managing, France's efforts against the Nazis, but he still found time to read. General James Mattis, retired U.S. Marine Corps general, who at one point had been Secretary of Defense under President Trump, really talked about this, saying that in the history of warfare, there's been so much written about warfare tactics, and that it would be almost criminal for a military leader to not read and learn from mistakes of the past so they don't make those same mistakes in the future. And so all the great leaders of our time and times past have all been readers. And that's number one. Number two, don't tell me you don't have time to read. You have plenty of time to read. I don't care if it's 15 or 20 minutes a day, you can read. Carve out time on your calendar just like you do with any other part of your business or your day. I mean, if you have time to watch TV, you have time to listen to music, you have time to exercise, you have time to eat, you can make time to read. And whether it's as soon as you wake up early in the morning or take 15, 20 minutes at night before you go to sleep, sometime during the day, whatever the situation is, find the time to read. Read fiction, read nonfiction, read biographies, read all kinds of things that are going to inform you. History really informs you. Biographies really inform you. And that will help add more weapons to your leadership toolkit, because it's important. Remember, I always talk about leadership is continuous improvement. You never, if you stop trying to improve yourself as a leader, you stagnate. Once you think you're there, once your ego tells you that no one can teach you anything else, that you got it all locked down, that's the day you start regressing as a leader. So I thought I would take just a few minutes to talk about some of the books that have shaped me in my leadership journey, especially in my formative years, that I want to share with you. Maybe you'll want to take a look at these books. Maybe you've got books of your own, but certainly I believe that by sharing some of these things, hopefully they'll be of help to you. A lot of these books were of help to me in critical times in my career when I was facing some difficult situations in business, both at CIA, but especially at Microsoft as Chief Security Officer, where we're faced with, as a lot of you know who are Chief Security Officers or in the security business, you understand we're dealing with crisis situations all the time, life safety issues all the time, and then then added to that are the usual things that every business person has to deal with: the budget issues, the personnel issues, all those things. But these are some of the books that really helped me help me to add more weapons to my leadership quiver. The first one I want to mention is Winning by Jack Welch. Jack Welch, for some of you who don't know, most of you should know, was CEO of GE during some really hard times in the 70s and early 80s, when GE was very bloated and very segmented. In my books, leadership books, Art of Ronin Leadership and the Art of Ronin Leadership Strategies, I mention that you have to have an integrated organization, right? You cannot have these silos. Strategic integration, I called it. And there are too many enterprises and businesses that have silos, and that's what Jack Welch found himself dealing with. Not only did he have silos, but he had to deal with a bloated organization, bloated leadership, too many employees. He got the nickname Neutron Jack. Now, there are subsequent books and analysis of Welch and whether they thought his methods were good, but he got results. But one of the reasons I like about this book is it really delves into the area of what I call and what he refers to as sort of the hidden secret in business, in that people don't say what they need to say, the ability to be direct. And I had a problem with that for the longest time. I was very subtle in how I did things. I talked about this in previous podcasts a long time ago when I started this podcast, about how my team at Microsoft Global Security, my leadership team, we invested in emotional intelligence training. And part of that training was the troops to give me feedback before they gave each other feedback. And one of the things that came out was, hey, Mike, you're too subtle. Like, we want you to be more direct. Sometimes we don't understand what you're trying to get across. I thought I was coming across pretty clearly, but obviously I wasn't. So, I had to learn to be more direct. And that's what Jack Welch talks about a lot in this book. there are at GE, he found that you would have meetings upon meetings upon meetings about some issue. You could never get to the heart of it because people danced around what was the heart of the matter. Maybe the heart of the matter was so-and-so who's responsible for a certain segment that of GE that is critical to solving the problem is not the right person, but nobody wants to talk about that. They're not doing the job because they're a nice guy or whatever, or that maybe the road that they're going upon is not the right one, but they've already gone down this road far enough that nobody is brave enough to say, wait a minute, maybe we should retrench. Maybe we should think about we made the wrong decision instead of continuing going on this rabbit hole. So a great deal of his book, talks about this topic, and it really helped me. And I refer to it. I did markers and notes on the book, and it really helped me, during critical times when I wanted to make sure I was making the right decision, going down the right path. It gave me some sustenance and some reference points. So Winning by Jack Welch is one of the books. I highly recommend it. It really talks about the struggles he had in trying to rein in this behemoth called GE at the time, to breaking down silos, making people more accountable, being direct so that you get to the heart of the matter first instead of just dancing around issues, which takes up more time, more space. It actually leads to more subtlety and lack of clear decision making as opposed to just being direct. So that's one of the ones that I refer to. That's one of my cornerstones. The other ones, there were two books by Patrick Lencioni. Again, I've mentioned him before in earlier podcasts. I haven't talked about him in a long time, but Lencioni has a group called the Table Group out of San Francisco. He's written a lot of books. They're all for the most part, in the form of a fable, a story where the protagonist, a businessman, a businesswoman, they're dealing with some issue of business that the book deals with, and it is told in a fable. And usually it follows this arc where this leader is embarking upon a new journey with a new team or a new project, and running into some roadblocks, maybe make some mistakes, and either through wise counsel of mentors or kind of figuring it out, they come up with the right solution. And then at the end of the book, there are concrete steps that you can take as leaders. Actually, you can download some quick tips on these books that I used to do that a lot. That will help you. That helps reinforce the teaching points. And they're all great books. So I would highly recommend read all of the Patrick Lencioni books. But the ones that stuck out for me were, number one, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. A lot of you have read that book. The 5 Dysfunctions really go to the heart of what is wrong with a lot of teams. And he goes into those 5 dysfunctions. There's certainly lack of trust, lack of conflict. I have this written here, lack of commitment. There's also avoidance of accountability and inattention to results. The big ones there for me are the absence of trust and the fear of conflict. That is something that befalls a lot of teams. A lack of trust. This is my lane. This is my space. This is my area. And I don't want you, my peer, to encroach upon this area or because this is mine, and you stay in your own lane because I don't trust you. And so that builds the silos, right? That builds the silos. And then, of course, that fear of conflict. And that ties in exactly to what Jack Welch talked about. That fear of having open conflict. And I've been in situations before where it's very personal. So it shouldn't be. Look, in a business situation, we are all business people. We're chewing on a business situation, a business problem. And maybe it's a situation where there are budget dollars to be allocated, and we have to look at priorities within a group and who should get the most and who should get the least, because you need to obviously put your efforts into those things that are really going to push and drive your overall strategic goals, right? Your big bets. But everybody obviously has their own equities and are thinking about their own teams, and nobody wants budget cuts, or nobody wants to feel like they're not the number one, emphasis on a team. And so there's this fear of this conflict of just getting to the heart of a matter, or they take it personally, right? When it's supposed to be just about business, and it takes a long time. You have to work at it. I mean, I could do a whole podcast on that, but you have to work at these things: this lack of trust and the fear of conflict. If you nail those two things down, for the most part, it may not be 100%, but if you nail that down, you will see exponential growth in your team, and the ability to drive to your strategic goals better and faster and in a more precise way than when you have all this internal conflict. You got to leave your egos at the door, and that's one of the big things about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. The other one that I really love, and again, I think I did a whole podcast on this earlier on, a couple of years ago, was death by meeting. I highly recommend you do that. I still believe to this day that one of the worst things that happens in business are meetings. Not that you shouldn't have them, but they tend to be, number one, too long, and they're usually a mishmash of everything. They're usually a mishmash of talking about strategy, talking about tactical issues, talking about budget, talking about this, talking about that. And then there's always the let's go around the table and update everybody on what everybody's doing. And what this book talks about is a lot of that is a waste of time. Time is a commodity. And the less time you spend in meaningless meetings, the more time you have to work on your overall strategic goals, or to hone your leadership skills, or to get out and meet the troops and all that other good stuff. That doesn't happen if you're stuck in a bunch of meetings hour after hour after hour. Number one, it's up to you leaders to make sure your meetings are crisp and to the point. So one of the things that this book talks about is, in terms of a model, is have a weekly tactical meeting at the beginning of the week where you just talk through as a team. Okay, Henry, what are you doing? Linda, what are you doing? John, what are you doing? Mike, this is what I'm doing. So that we all have an idea of what everyone's doing that particular week. And if I'm talking to someone in legal and I find out, oh, Linda is going to be talking to someone in legal, is it the same person? If not, what are we talking about? Are we going cross purposes, or maybe we can tag team this together? Just gets everybody on the same plane. Very tactical. Once a month, you have the 2 to 3 to 4 hour strategy meeting where you go through all the big bets. What are the big strategic goals? The BHAGs, right? The big, hairy, audacious goals that you're trying to get across in that particular fiscal year, or 2-3 years, right? You want to be able to talk through that and have enough time to chew on that. And so it's not just trying to get around the table so everybody can say what they've been doing. Then the boss talking about what his staff meeting was like, and then it just becomes a mishmash trying to get a bunch of things crammed into a 60 or 90 minute meeting. And those strategy meetings I loved them with my leadership team, because to really deep dive into things and then come up with deconflict, number one, so that we make sure we're all on the same page as with the tactical meeting, but we're all on the same page. Example I always give is, if I've got 2 direct reports, they each need resources in India at our subsidiary there. Who needs it more and why? And did we get input from the business out there as to what their priorities are? Or did you guys just decide on your own to talk to HR in India without talking to each other first? And then we can talk in terms of strategy-wise as an organization, what are the resources we critically need out there? And somebody is going to take second place, but that's part of business. It goes back to, if you can nail the absence of trust and fear of conflict, these kind of conversations can take place without people always getting bent out of shape. But that's important. And then twice a year, you do an all-day session, an all-day off-site, where you get the team together and really talk about the big bets for the next fiscal year, or you take stock of at mid-year, and then you talk about big bets for the next fiscal year. So Death by Meeting, golden. I highly recommend it. I had a friend of mine who was a VP at Microsoft, and one of the things I remember in terms of meetings, like all of us, we all meet with our direct reports. Typically, we meet with them once a month, usually for half an hour to an hour. And he told me, he said, I decided I'm going to do 20 minutes and with my direct reports. And they need to be coming in there crisp and telling me exactly what they need, what they're about, so we're not wasting time. And he found out that it worked. And it was a better meeting. And they both his direct reports as well as this VP got a lot of time back. So I always remembered that. Another book that really struck me over the years, I've been a big fan of Colin Powell for a long, long time. The late General Colin Powell. He had just a tremendous career in the military, Vietnam vet. He was an Army Ranger. He went up the ranks to become chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff during the first Gulf War. And then eventually, he was a national security advisor to presidents, and he also became Secretary of State. And then just a phenomenal career. But he's written several books. One of them was called "I Work for Me," and it goes into Powell's 13 rules of leadership, which I've done podcasts on before, which is really good for every leader to take a look at those 13 rules, because they go really to the heart of what it means to be a leader. Put your ego out of the way. It'll look better in the morning. Get mad, then get over it. That's a big one. A lot of bosses can't do that. Just these golden rules of leadership. But it also goes into the mistakes that he made along the way as a leader, how he learned from them, because we all make mistakes, and hopefully we'll all learn from them. How important it is that as a leader, your team comes first, you come second. And that is something that's lost on a lot of people in leadership positions, because a lot of people in leadership positions shouldn't be in those positions. They're there because they're subject matter experts. They're the best spy of the CIA. They're a great software developer, engineer at Microsoft. Whatever that the situation is, they're the best subject matter experts. So, hey, we promote you, and now you're in charge of a team. You may not want to be in charge of a team. You may want the promotion, you won't want the extra money, but you don't have the mindset to be a leader. And that's why we have so many dysfunctional leaders in both business and government, is because they haven't trained to be leaders. They don't have the mindset to be a leader. And they don't get what leadership is all about. And it's not about you, it's about them. And the book goes into a lot of that. And I think it's really important. That book I've read several times, and it just continues to inform me. And again, I found solace in a lot of these books during real critical times when either I was doubting myself or I was feeling a lot of pressure at work because there were a lot of things coming down the pike. And whether it was a budget issue or a personnel issue, whether it was a crisis issue, a life safety issue, it really, these books gave me solace. And that's a big part of, I think, what it really lets me know. It really helped me to show me that I wasn't the only one. With a lot of these books, whether it's Powell and others that I'll mention, there were times when they had their doubts. They didn't, they were great leaders. And when it came time to stepping up, they stepped up and they got things done, and they made the hard, tough decisions that all leaders have to make. But they're human. They all had doubts, self-doubts, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a good one. Another one that was, I love this one. Team of Rivals. So Team of Rivals, written by Doris Kearns Goodwin. I've mentioned her before, great historian. And it's all about Lincoln and when he became president, how he put together a cabinet made up of a lot of folks that didn't like him personally, were political rivals of his, didn't think he had the chops for the job. He doubted himself too, but in his wisdom, which you never see nowadays with our so-called political leaders, is he brought in people like these because he knew they were the best people for the job. They were best people for the job. They weren't there just because they agree with your ideology or your vision of how you want people to see things. They were the best people for the job. And over a period of time, the book really describes how they clashed, but then how they got to know Lincoln and realized that his heart was in the right direction and that they were all wedded to a common goal, which is to win the war against the South, right, and preserve the Union. And how some of them became his great friends, best friends. And so it's a great lesson for you leaders as you're building teams to not always have a bunch of yes people and maybe bring in some contrarians. As long as they're playing well in the sandbox, it's good to have people with differing opinions so that the decisions that you make will be the best decisions that you can. And it's really about tapping down on your ego and learning that it's not about you, it's about them. Organize for Success. Actually, I have that book here with me, Organize for Success by Stephanie Winston. The best book, in my opinion, on productivity. There are a lot of books on productivity, but to me, this is the best book I found because it really, what she did was she went to and interviewed a whole bunch of leaders, Bill Gates included, public and private sector, found out how they organize themselves so that they could get through their day in a more cohesive way, right? And get more bang for their buck. And all of them had different ways of doing it, but there were some commonalities about managing meetings and, as we talked about earlier, or making sure that you actually plan out your day so that you're not inundated with meetings, that you make sure you have time for strategy. How do you manage phone calls? How do you manage emails? That kind of stuff. All that is in here. So I would highly recommend. If I could show you. I've got this thing. I've written in it. I've worked in it I use it as a tool. Here you go. As a tool. And I referred to it over and over again as I was really trying to get myself to be more productive and get my team to be productive. So that's a really good one. And then the last one I want to mention is a biography. I believe in biographies, and you should definitely read biographies because they go into not just the story of whoever you're reading about, but especially when those folks are leaders, it goes into a lot of their faults or a lot of their insecurities, because we all have them, whether it's imposter syndrome or whatever you want to call it. So there's a book called Patton, The Man Behind the Legend by Martin Blumenthal. He's a great historian. And I read that several times over. Patton, as you know, was a great commander in World War II, was a tank commander, fought in North Africa, then Europe. But he was brash. He was arrogant. But I think he cared about his troops. He cussed like a sailor, but he prayed. I mean, he's a man of contrasts. But one of the things that struck me about this book more than anything else about all the accomplishments he made and his army made, his armored division made, was he had insecurities. There were times when he doubted himself and whether or not he was making the right decision. And I suspect, every president, well, let's say most presidents, there are some presidents that their egos are so high that they don't think they ever make any mistakes. But for most presidents, most leaders, and a lot of military leaders and business leaders, they probably have moments of pause where they're not sure if they're making the right decision. And that's okay. And that's one of the reasons I think this book is good, because it goes into this larger-than-life military hero who had doubts, but still managed to persevere and push forward. And I think that was a great theme that I took from that book. Now, there are a lot of other books right now. I'm reading a book right now on Cato, not the Green Hornet Cato, but the Roman statesman who really influenced a lot of our founding fathers, because Cato had the principles of leadership, statesmanship, civic duty, and speaking truth to authority that you don't find in today's world. It's rare that you find any of that, especially in our political circles. It's totally lacking in politics nowadays. So I'm reading that. But main point is, these are the books that have influenced me. There are others, a lot of others, but there's too many to describe. But I wanted to give you a snapshot, the ones that really resonated with me over the years. And so please send me some comments on, I'd love to hear the books that influenced you. So please comment on that, and let me know if you have read any of these books, or you intend to read any of these books. And once you read them, let me know what you thought about them. But I think these books will help you once you get through them, to help, again, add more tools to your leadership toolkit. So that's what I have for you today. Thanks again for supporting the channel. Again, hit the subscribe button, the like button, share this video, comment on this video, and let me know if there's anything else, any kind of topics that I haven't touched in the last 2-3 years that you want me to comment on. But please go to MikeHowardAuthor.com. You'll find links to all my books there. Amazon.com. You'll find my books there as well. I'd be happy if you bought copies, downloaded copies, and supported the cause. I appreciate it. Have a great Memorial Day, and we'll be back at you next time.